Hi, I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. Today I'm joined once again by Stephan, and today we're going to look at the power column as it relates to his mind-body symptoms. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below and we'll get back to you personally. And finally, you can reserve your place in one of my seminars, join my monthly membership group, or purchase any of my mind-body guides, also known as the PDFs, at www.crushingdoubt.org. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Stephan about the power column. Hi, Stephan. It is great to be back here with you. I'm so excited because last time we were together, we were all revved up. It was a lot of good stuff happening. Maybe you can update me on where you're at, and then today, of course, we're diving into the power column, so I'll get into that. But tell me how you're doing.
Hi, Dan. Great to be back. I've been doing really well. I've had a really good week. I started going back to the gym pretty regularly and hitting a lot of the workouts that I used to hit up prior to my incident years ago. And everything's been great so far. I haven't had any aches or any pains, no back flare-ups, which has been great. And I haven't been like overdoing it at the gym, but I haven't been like holding back, which is good. And in terms of that wrist pain that I was experiencing, that kind of faded away. And then I started feeling it kind of appearing on my like left wrist. And then I started thinking about it. I was thinking, is this like a real pain, or is this like, just like something coming from here? And then, once I started kind of looking at it through that lens, it slowly faded away, actually quickly faded away. And so now I'm good. I'm feeling great, actually.
So I'm curious what that's like for you. I mean, first of all pain's real. It probably, pain receptors were firing or whatever, but you're gaining an ability to make the pain go away, to shift the symptoms, and you're recognizing the patterns. And for me, that was mind-blowing when I started to see that. So I'm curious, how's that settling with you as you see the reality of this? Obviously, it's something pleasing.
I mean, it's incredible. It feels very liberating. It feels very liberating, not just because I can go work out. Also was doing my workouts without like a back brace. And I would always wear a back brace to like anything physical. And so it's nice to not have to rely on that. It's nice to be able to go grocery shopping and not, think, oh man, I hope I don't hurt myself bringing the groceries in the house. And then it's nice to just be able to assess pain differently. Like whenever I do feel it, because, little instances come here and there. But
Sure.
yeah, it feels very empowering.
So I just wanted to ask a quick question about this before we dive into the power column, because you're having really, really great success with the doubt column. You're making huge progress very quickly, and that can happen for a lot of people. And what I want to do is think about what's allowing you to believe it at the level that you're believing it, because you're changing pretty fast in your belief system, which is great.
I think it was, it's what we were discussing our last session, that if I had the power to feel like I was delicate and weak and in this chronic situation of pain, then I also have the same power to believe that I'm not weak. I have the same power to believe that I'm strong, and that, I'm not in a constant state of pain. And
Mm-hmm.
so just realizing that I have that ability to be anywhere on that spectrum is pretty remarkable, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, it really sounds like it's freeing you up, and I think what you will find, more than think, I know what you're going to find. You're going to have more and more success with this. If there is any kind of flare up, I'll be able to interpret it for you and help you understand why it temporarily flared up, very, very temporarily. And I want to keep you in the mindset of moment to moment experience where you can actually make that flare up go away at any second with the right belief system. So you're not in any danger anymore. You weren't in the first place, but now you know you're not. And we're going to keep extending this. So actually, I was thinking this is a great lead in for the power column, actually, because one way of thinking about what we've done is you are now asserting power over the symptoms. You feel in a powerful position in relation to the symptoms, whereas before They were dominating you. You felt that they had all the power. I think that's one way of putting it. Does that make sense to you intuitively?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So power is really about whether we feel in control or good in all kinds of different situations. And there's three main areas of power. There's the relationship with ourselves, and that's the core aspect of power. Are we having a good relationship with ourselves or not? Then there's power in relation to other people, the people we interact with, the people who are important in our lives, or even total strangers. You can feel in power in an interaction or completely out of power in an interaction. And the same is true with symptoms. Now, when you have a kind of power struggle with the symptoms, the interesting thing is the way you resolve that kind of power problem is in the doubt column. So that's already what you've been doing. You've been using science and logic to assert your power over the symptoms, and more you're going to come to feel incredibly powerful there. What we're going to do today, though, is start to build that system out so it's not just over the symptoms. I want to build up power in your relationship with you and in your relationship with others. And I should say this. Everybody comes to me at different phases of that game with themselves. Some people come to me and they're already super powerful with themselves. It's not really as much of an issue. But maybe they're not harnessing it as much as they need to. Or maybe there's certain areas that need to get smoothed out. So we're going to do a little bit of exploration in this, just so I can show you how to use this tool. Because each column is a tool to understand how to think about an aspect of mind-body experience. I'm going to back up just for a little bit of summary, a little review for you. Remember, the emotions column is for those onsets and upticks in symptoms. And they relate to an unconscious emotional experience that we don't want to know about. And our mind distracts us from that knowledge with the symptom. And that's just where it begins, or it goes as an uptick. The supposedly chronic stuff, which of course we talked about as consistently acute, very moment to moment, but looks totally unbroken, that's about doubt. And so we've been working on that, and that's the tool that we use for that kind of symptom. The power column is for plateaus, and we'll see if this may or may not be a column that you need to use a whole lot, or maybe it's one you already use kind of naturally. We're going to find out. But if you find that you're getting better and you're doing great, but then you kind of level off, or you hit a wall, and the symptoms are kind of now staying in one place after moving down, that's a power column issue. And what I've found in exploring this with myself and other people is that this tends to relate to some kind of conflict within the self. And this actually, you may hear echoes of the emotions column in this. The power column is a little like the emotions column, but it's used in a very different way. The emotions column is used to categorize the different themes that might apply and just relate them to the symptoms. It's all about connecting the two. The power column, though, is different. The power column is about enacting actual change in your emotional life, if you want that sort of change. And the way we do that is to describe each person in a particular way through the power column lens. And that's part of what I'm going to walk you through, and then talk about how do you use this column. So we don't know if you're going to hit a plateau in your recovery. You might just go guns blazing, crushing doubt everywhere you go, and just resume normal physical activity and find it's totally in your past, and it's not something you need to worry about so much. I think we did find, though, that there were some emotions column themes that maybe in some ways that surprised you, or at least were organizing to you, could orient you to why there might be symptoms related to emotions. Would you say that those things are true so far about the two columns we mentioned, emotions and doubt?
Definitely.
Okay. So the power column it's a very interesting column, and it plays out in very different ways for each person. But a lot of times it is about organizing all of those emotional themes. If you could just take them all into one and mash them into one major broad theme, that's what your power column is about. I'll give you an example. With me, people who watch me know this. A lot of my emotions column themes all condensed into one idea of, did I feel valid or not? And it was that simple. Now for you, I don't know what that's going to be, but there's an exercise that I do in the power column that we can either try here today, and we probably will do some trying, but we may need extra time with it. You may need to go through the motions of doing this. So this is something I call creating the core narrative. The core narrative is the story of you as you've suffered. So we all have lots of different aspects of ourselves. But there's a part of you that has suffered. Everybody suffers. Life has, in Buddhism, they say life is pain. There is suffering that we all experience. The core narrative is an attempt to, or an exercise really, that gets us to the heart of that, what the suffering is. So I'm going to take you through that exercise in a minute, but I wanted to explain a little bit more about what goes on in the power column. Once we get this core narrative set, it's a way of describing how you've suffered, how it impacted you, and what you might be able to do about it to change that. So it sets out a path to maybe shift some things around. Now, we're going to see how much you need this. This might be something, knowing you as I do, this might be something that comes very naturally to you, or maybe is even something you were already doing. But I'm just going to show you new areas to do it in and new ways of doing it. So we'll figure it out as we go. Once you've got the core narrative, though, you get to measure each moment in terms of, are you feeling powerful or not in relation to yourself, others, and your symptoms. And as we go through this will make more sense if it doesn't already. So how are we so far in this? Do you need me to explain anything about that?
No, so good so far.
Okay. So let's just define one thing, and then we're going to dive into the core narrative. Power with the self. What does that really mean? Now, when I think about it, the simplest way I can put it to you is, do you feel good or not in a given moment? If you're feeling good, then you're in power with yourself. But if something's really bothering you and you don't feel good about you in some way, you're out of power. And we can get knocked out of power at any given moment. And we can also climb right back into it at any given moment. And that's what the power column is for, is to start tracking these moments of feeling powerful or not. So let me ask you before we dive in, does this ring a bell with your experience of life? As you think about it, are there moments you felt really powerful and moments you felt really disempowered and not good?
Definitely. I think a lot of times when I'm on the right path and I'm hitting all my goals and I see progress and I'm doing what I love, then I feel powerful.
Yeah.
And even if I'm not necessarily hitting my goals, but as long as I'm doing what I love and I'm on the way, I'm in the direction of where I want to go, I typically feel amazing. I typically, I jump out of bed. I'm just ecstatic to be here. In the moments where I'm not living for myself, I'm doing things I'm not passionate about, when I'm not doing things I care about, when I feel like I'm forced to do things, then I feel pretty frustrated. If I miss my goals, I typically feel, frustrated.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think a lot of the times in my life where I've been doing well, it's a result of me being on this right trajectory. And the moments where, I've been at my lowest points or my moments of heightened vulnerability, has usually been these moments where I kind of went off my path, where I kind of lost my way.
So when you do feel like you lost your way, do you have ways back into power? Is that something you've figured out for yourself? What's that like?
Yeah, I sometimes I have to remind myself of who I am, and why I'm doing what I do, right? Because life is such an interesting experience with endless, infinite options and opportunities, and there's no necessarily right or wrong way, but one decision can lead you in a whole different direction. So I don't know, a lot of times I'll get an epiphany. Yeah, I'll get epiphanies. I maybe have dreams that tell me, they kind of point me in the right direction. I'm also very I'm also very like observant of like signs. So I believe like life gives you a lot of signs. Just sometimes we don't pay attention, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
like the signs are very literal. Sometimes like they're very symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so a lot of times it's just being able to connect with these things and just get back on the right path. And like that's okay. That happens, like seldom is like life just like one straight direction. Like there's all kinds of turns and deviations. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times it's just like reminding myself of like of who I am and why I'm doing what I'm doing.
So this is really interesting, Stefan. Everybody I meet with is very different because we're all unique individuals, and each person has a different columns profile. And I would say that you are somebody who has been using the power column your whole life. Maybe you haven't thought about it in those terms because I'm just bringing this term to you. But you've been assessing, do I feel good? Am I connected to me? Am I going along my path or not? And then you're making adjustments. So you are somebody who's using the power column even before I met you more than most people I meet. And there's a compliment in there certainly, but it also is something that should tell you that this column's going to be easy for you. And for some people, it's not. For some people, they're very, they might have been taught that power's bad, that it's not okay, that they can't take up their space. You don't have that, from what I'm hearing. Does that feel right to you? I don't know
Yeah,
the answer. Only you do.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's
Okay, so this
accurate.
is this is going to be an interesting exercise going through the core narrative and the power column with somebody who naturally does this. But we're gonna see what we get out of it and where it goes. So I'm gonna take you through the exercises now. Okay.
Okay.
The core narrative is 3 sentences long. Do you have something to write with? Or actually, I can
Yeah.
take
I-
notes. Is that better?
Yeah. Sure. Either's fine.
I'll take the notes because I know that can sometimes be helpful, and that way I can send them to you afterwards.
Perfect.
So the core narrative is 3 sentences long, and sometimes these sentences can be kind of on the long side. They can be run-on sentences. This is a rough draft. We don't need to get it right here. It's the exercise that matters. I say this to people sometimes. What the end result of the core narrative isn't actually going to matter as much as the doing of it, because doing it is going to help you crystallize that understanding in your mind, and you'll carry the general idea with you. So here's the way it works. There are 3 sentences. The first sentence is, how have you suffered in your life more centrally? And I'm gonna help you formulate this, but the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna look back at your emotions column themes and kind of the major things that have happened to you, and try to condense it down into one or maybe two main ideas about how you've suffered. The second sentence is how it's impacted you. What are the ways in your actual real life that suffering has led to any particular outcomes or ways that you are that have maybe exacerbated the suffering or dug you deeper into it or taken you down paths that were unexpected? Just how has it impacted you? The third sentence is where you're most going to need help from me on about what to do differently. But the ironic thing is, given that you already have a very strong power column, I don't think you're going to need much help with it. I actually think you might already know what to do, which is interesting. So let's go through this exercise and see what we come up with. I want to say this too. When we did the emotions column work, and this is another way that you have a particular profile that sometimes that is like some people but different than others. A lot of the emotions column stuff, it wasn't as well defined when we started out. I don't know if you would agree with that, but it felt like you know yourself, but it wasn't as well organized as when we started to shape it into these themes. So the core narrative, especially at the beginning, that actually might be a bit tricky for us as we try to sort this out, because you're not one to define yourself on the suffering. In fact, people who are very strong in the power column right from the start, they don't tend to think about it that way, except for the sense of identity, which you really nailed, who you are. So I may need to help you with this, and I will tweak that and smooth it out and bring things out as we go. But I want you to take a stab at it first. Would you say there's anything you could say to sum up how you've suffered in your life? Most centrally. And look back on those emotional themes to draw some inspiration if you're not sure where to go.
Uh, how I've suffered. I think I've uh, I've always been I've always been like an underdog, and having been this underdog, um, it's definitely like a point of suffering, but it's like in a way like that, like suffering and that experience kind of like becomes like a driving motivational force for me. I've always been, even though like I'm very social, I'm very friendly, and like I love people. I've always kind of been an outsider, or felt like an
Mm-hmm.
outsider, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it has to do, like I'm just like I'm very diverse. Like I have just I'm a very mixed individual. I'm in terms of just like my family, like where my family is from, the
Mm-hmm.
places that I've been raised, the environments that I've been raised in. And so I feel like I get along, and I do really well in a lot of environments, but like I, I don't necessarily feel like I'm at home in a lot of these environments. And so,
Mm.
um, with that, there's been like, I've learned to kind of be like a chameleon and to like code switch just so I can be success. Like it started out, I think, like as a survival thing, when I was growing up, but then I realized that like led to my success and allowed me to be able to um, survive in certain environments, and then ultimately like help me thrive in other environments. Um, so
Hmm.
yeah, I think this like constant feeling of feeling like, yeah, I'm never, not necessarily, it's not that like I'm good. No, it's like I don't doubt that I'm good enough or anything like that. It's like maybe I just don't necessarily like fit in like on like a vibrational level.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Um,
That's really profound. And I think you did a great job identifying something. What I want to do now is explore this because
yeah,
you've hit on a key point. And what we're going to do is explore how much does this nail everything? That's what we want, is something that really represents the full you. And this sounds like it's well on the way to that, actually. I want to read back what I wrote so far as I just jotted down notes. And this is just kind of in my words, but taking your words. And we're forming it together. So here's what I have so far. I have always been an underdog and felt like an outsider in my diversity. And while that has become a driving motivational force and I have done really well, I often do not feel I have a home and spend a lot of time being a chameleon. Now, that's what I have so far. I don't actually think this is totally done, but does that represent what you said?
yeah, it does.
Okay.
Beautifully. Yeah.
All right. Let's see if what I want to do is bring out. I never like that people suffered, of course, and I'm not trying to bring out the suffering, but I want to see if we can get to a more emotional valence about what we just said. So, were there ways that it hurt you or maybe made you work too hard or felt frustrating or
I,
alienating?
yeah. I mean, I think I'm better about it now, but when
Mm-hmm.
I was younger, this led me to being like an extreme people pleaser,
Mm-hmm.
and that became like it like to the point of detriment, to the point where like it got me in a lot of trouble. Like when I was in college, like that's essentially that was like the recipe for like the situation that I got into. And for the longest time, I was incapable of saying no, and
Mm-hmm.
and almost to like a point, like it almost became like disrespectful to myself, this inability to say no. And then even as I got past my college days, even into my 20s, there was just so many moments where I was just so, maybe I just wanted like acceptance so bad that I'd be willing to go out of my way to just please anyone, even if it was the wrong crowd, even if it was like at my expense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and yeah, like a lot of times, like I would just go overextend myself for others, when, if I was, in a situation where I needed that help, it was never reciprocated. Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like I think now with maturity and just life experience, I'm much better at that. And I'm much better at putting my foot down and saying no, and assessing situations. But yeah, I think that's something that I struggled with for a long time.
So this is a really good. It could be a really good start. It could be that you've already really nailed this. But it feels like the theme of being an underdog, an outsider, not having a home, craving acceptance, has been pretty central for you. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It partly comes from a lot of strengths, actually. You have a lot of different parts to you, but as a result, you can't be pigeonholed. There's like you're pretty unique, which is a great thing, but it does have that downside, and I can certainly relate to that. I had the same thing. So it feels to me like we're saying something that's really important. I just wanted you to know what I added to that sentence was the idea of craving acceptance, because that makes it feel even more emotionally important. When we're done with this core narrative, I say this to people a lot. The core narrative should either make you feel either angry about something about the way it went, or sad about something about the way it went, or desiring to be known. I think of the three, desiring to be known is the one that you're probably going to resonate with the most. You're not one to get bogged down in the negative feelings, and I know we talked about that in the emotions column more. But it does feel like this is such a central part of you, and I'm really quite impressed that you were able to really zero in on so much of what it is. But this is to the point that I make to people all the time. People say to me, "Well, why? How come you have how come you were able to understand me so well?" And the thing is, it's not so much that I understand people so well, it's that I trust that they understand themselves. Now, some people don't, but that's pretty rare, actually. Usually people know themselves. You just nailed this because you know you. So what I have so far in the core narrative is this idea of being an underdog, an outsider, different, craving acceptance, not feeling a home, and kind of trying to just make sure you fit in, and maybe not feeling like there's a place for just you. Does that feel right as a general thing?
Definitely.
Okay, hold on. I want to make one more note of that. I'm just going to add not feeling like there is room. I'm going to have to rearrange this. But when I send it to you, I'll rearrange it. But I'm just taking notes right now. We've got the central idea. Then you started to get into the second sentence, and you did a beautiful job of this as well. You started to talk about how it impacted you. Here's what I have so far. I became an extreme people pleaser to the point of detriment, incapable of saying no, and it got me into a lot of trouble in a way that sometimes even disrespected myself. Those were the words you said. Does that reflect it well?
Yes.
Okay, is there anything you would add in terms of the major things that happened to you because of this that we can just take notes on? We can kind of mash it into one sentence eventually? Or does that feel like it
It
nails it?
it definitely feels like it nails it. And maybe because of that, it caused me to sometimes take the harder route. The by hard route, like I mean like the hard knock route,
Mm,
not like the longer scenic route, but like the hard knock school
yeah.
route.
And is it the case that that then led to added suffering for you?
Yeah, I think it led to to added suffering for me. And I think maybe led to some suffering of like my parents, particularly like my mom. And then I think seeing her suffer made me
Mm,
suffer, because I feel like I'm usually pretty good at like like I could take pain and stuff, but like I hate seeing my mom and you know and any
yeah.
kind of like level of like disappointment or like concern for me.
Yeah. Okay. again, I just want to highlight something. This is it's not only for you, but for the people who watch this. You, apropos of what we're talking about, you are a very unique character. And one of the ways your uniqueness is playing out here, as I said, is that you actually have been using the power column your whole life. And the way to use the power column is to identify who you really are as your suffering self. The fact that you were able to articulate this so easily and so clearly is because you've already done this, in a sense. You've thought about this before. You've thought about, well, how am I suffering? What's happening? Who am I? You've done a lot of thinking about this. And it's all very well organized here. And this is another really interesting part. Most people actually have the most trouble getting their core narrative to be identified because it's hard to sum yourself up. It's hard to get to the core of things. Interestingly, I think you had an easier time knowing the core of things, and in the emotions column where there were parts of yourself, that was a little harder to totally highlight. Now, when we get to the third sentence here, because the first sentence is, how have you suffered and why? The second sentence is, what did it lead to in your actual life? Although, actually, I want to ask a question about that. I'll ask that in a second. Let me finish up my explanation. The third sentence is, what are you going to do about it? And you've already been doing this. So your third sentence, usually when I'm helping people with the third sentence, they need some kind of orientation from me, some suggestions. I don't think you're going to need that. I think what I'm going to hear is, what have you already done? Because you're already doing your third sentence. But I want to find out what that is. Before we get there, though, a couple of questions about that second sentence. Did this impact you in particular ways, specific ways in relation to relationships or your career path?
So it also led to me shifting my career path because I wanted to go to law school and then go into politics. And I wanted to become a politician one day. And that was just like the vision I had for myself for a long time. And then when I got into all this trouble, at school and legal troubles, I thought, wow, like I could never go down that road because I'll constantly have this over me. People will always be bringing this up. And so that caused me to then kind of focus on like what it was that I wanted to do my whole life. And at the core, it's always been to tell stories. And, it just so happened that acting and filmmaking was that avenue. So it caused me to shift in a more like creative direction, which I think was in the long run, like it was a good thing, right? Because this is like a direction that I really love and I'm really happy for. So yeah, it did cause me to shift careers. It caused me to lose relationships with a lot of people. I had an extremely large network because I was also very social. And I, did a lot of events. I used to throw big events in New York City. And so I had like this really big social network. And, I thought I had all these friends and a lot of them really were not my friends, right? And so it caused me to, minimize the circle. But I think ultimately that in itself was a blessing though, too, because I think I was like operating out of a point of naivety. Mm-hmm. Right, where I thought like everyone was my friend, and that just definitely was not the case, right? And so that definitely created issues. And then I think after that point, since I had gone through the situation that I went through, I didn't really want to judge other people, and I still try not to judge other people, but there's a difference between judging people and having discernment.
Wow. Yeah.
And so part of the reason that I got in trouble in the first place, apart from being a people pleaser and all these things, inability to say no, was also lack of discernment. Right. So then I realized that I can be non-judgmental, but I could also have discernment. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, for a long time, I didn't have this discernment, and I would just give everyone and anyone the time of day. And I wouldn't want to judge anyone just because I'd been through so many things. And I had hit some incredible lows. So, you know, I definitely never wanted to regard anyone in a certain kind of way. So, yeah, I think over the years I've learned about discernment more. And then
Mm.
also being that I've spent a lot of time on the spiritual path and understanding and learning different spiritual concepts, I also perceive things energetically a lot more. So if it doesn't feel right or the energy doesn't sit well with me, the vibration doesn't agree with me, I have no problem removing myself from the situation or the person.
Wow.
And
Oh my God. You're this is incredible. Keep going. I have a lot to say about this. Keep going on the
so,
spiritual side and the ability
yeah,
to step away.
yeah. So now I don't really feel that guilt anymore for discerning a situation and removing myself from a situation if it's not conducive, if it's not going to help me progress, if it's not going to help me reach more enlightenment, if it's not going to help me reach goals,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so now I've learned to be more just selective with peers and with activities that I get involved in, and 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 so fortunately, I think I've been able to turn all these like difficult instances and experiences into this path that I'm now on, and you know, even though I might sometimes get off track a little bit, I can more quickly, you know, reground myself and focus on like what's truly important.
Really incredible. But this speaks to what I was talking about, Stefan. I knew this from just hearing a little bit about you and knowing you as I do, even though I don't know you super well. It doesn't take long to get this out of you. And I'm so glad that we're doing this because, you know, a lot of times these columns can really help people, but there are other times where, as is the case with right now, this is going to help a huge amount of people because they're hearing about someone who has enacted a power column essentially within themselves and how. So it's beautiful, and you're very strong in this capacity. And so normally I'd be helping somebody figure out this column. With you, we're just outlining what you've already done. We're describing it in a different way. I will show you, though, how this relates to your symptoms, and I'm going to do that in a minute. But let me read what I have as kind of the rough draft of the third sentence here. I found a new focus on who I am at my core, telling stories and using my creativity to express who I am, utilizing my unique and special qualities, and can now feel the freedom from judging, but also have developed good discernment. I found my spiritual groove and have the ability to step away when the vibrations aren't right. I am free of guilt when I need to leave, and I make choices with real care for myself that centers around my knowledge of who I am and what I need. Does that feel right to you?
It does.
Yeah. Stefan, we've done a really really cool exercise with you where we're just seeing how what you do aligns with exactly what I try to tell people to do. And so you've already kind of got this. Just keep doing what you're doing in this. When it comes to assessing power, though, especially with your symptoms, that's where I think you needed my help. I think that you know how to do this with yourself and live a life that's aligned with you, which is what the power column is all about. I think you figured out how to do it with other people, assessing those vibrations and feeling like, do I fit here or not, and making choices that work for you. So you already are doing the things in the power column that I would need you to do. Where I think I have already helped, or this process has helped anyway, is recognizing that there even is a power dynamic with the symptoms. You didn't know. You just thought the symptoms were there. And I think it's really interesting because I think now that you know this information, this is one of the reasons you're taking off as fast as you are. You already know how to operate powerfully. And so you've taken the information I gave you and you're starting to move in powerful directions with it. So the only thing you really need to work on in the power column, other than just continuing to do what you're doing and expanding it, is to recognize that the symptoms can come under this also. And the way that you do that, the way you assert your power, is by crushing all of the doubts that you have about them And this is why your doubt column is where so much of the work is going to take place. I mean, we're identifying a power column view of that, but it really is all the same thing. It's about living your life with the symptoms in the same way that you live with yourself and others now. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does.
So this is really exciting stuff. You have so much of what you need. You've gotten a lot of good information from Dr. Sarno, from me. You already have your power column up and running from all the work that you've done in the past. We've discovered some things about the more specific emotions column things, and we can continue to expand that out. But we have a lot of good stuff in place. Now, this is interesting because when I met you, you didn't know about Dr. Sarno. We were kind of starting from scratch. Usually these sessions are 4 consultation sessions. One is usually, one for each column and then one for action steps. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see what we do with you because your power column is so strong. You're already doing a lot of the action steps, and you've also made huge steps in the doubt column department. So when we meet next time, what I'm going to do is to orient you to what action steps are, even though I'll give you the basics right now so you can start to think about it. And then we're going to start to kind of map out what do you do in each of these columns. Now, we're finding out today there isn't that much to do in the power column except to recognize that the symptoms need to be under your power just like everything else. So when it comes to action steps of the power column, it's going to be a pretty short list because you've already done it. But what we can do is highlight what you already do. So we'll go through each column and determine what to do next. Now, let me tell you a little bit about what action steps are. Sometimes people get confused by that term. They hear the word action and they think you got to go do something, which totally fair that they would think that. But one of the reasons that I named it that and stuck with it is that what we're really looking for is action steps of thinking in new ways. Now, your power column and the way that it operates shows an ability to do that, a huge ability to do that. You have found ways to think differently from certain situations. So you're already good at doing this in the power column kind of way. You now are getting really good at it in the doubt column sort of way. You went back to the gym. I would be really interested to hear what action steps of thought did you actually take? Because you did. There must have been things you were saying to yourself or ways you were thinking about it. And as we go through next time, we're going to go through what is it that you're doing that you're having success with in each of these columns. Fascinating, though, that in the power column, you don't need to do that much work because speaking to your point, being different than other people, you did it again. You're different than other people here, too. But we see how great it is. Okay, so we're going to wrap up for today in a minute. Okay. But does that make sense as a concept? This was a concept that you already kind of knew. I needed to describe to you what I normally do with people, but in this case, you already had it. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does. And sometimes all you have to do is realize your power, because a lot of us forget, or we don't even know that we have power, that we are in power, right? And then I guess a lot of times if you don't recognize your own power, in a way you kind of lose that power to other things. So just like the mere act of just recognizing it, acknowledging it and understanding it, I think does a lot.
Yeah, I had a quick question before we do wrap up. Do you have a sense of where you got this understanding of power, as I call it, or whatever we would call it?
I think I've just had a resilient nature since I can recall. And I think I've just kind of built on top of that. And I realized that if things didn't destroy me, because I'm still here, then I could gain power from going through those things.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I was just thinking, it's almost like your uniqueness and your multifaceted nature has been a great hardship and also the very thing that got you out of all that trouble and towards all the great stuff at the same time.
I would agree. I think that there's a like a very there's a lot of duality there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even like when I do reflect on like the hardships, I'm like grateful for them because that's what makes me who I am. And like I
Mm-hmm.
can't imagine any of my success or any of my achievements or who or being who I am without that.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to separate the two.
There's a term that I use in the power column, which is that I want people to work to get to an acceptance of the fullness of their trauma. And sometimes people bristle at the word trauma. They're like, oh, I didn't suffer that much. But I don't mean it in a like victim sort of way. I just mean it in terms of experience sort of way. And I would say that you are a good example of somebody who has accepted the fullness of you, which is exactly what we want to do here. So really fascinating work, different than I usually encounter, not surprisingly, based on who you are. But hopefully that'll be exciting for you because you're already good at this and you're doing something that's so important, and it's going to make your other columns stronger and stronger and stronger. So, Stephan, thank you again for joining me today, for sharing these things, for sharing who you are. And I think it's really going to help a lot of people to kind of see that this is somebody who does it without me even telling them to do it. You had figured it out on your own. So, great work.
Well, thank you for walking me through this process, and by you breaking this down for me, it just helps so much. It helps so much because, like I mentioned earlier, sometimes half the battle is just acknowledging these
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
It's also validating what you've done. You know, you did some really important stuff, and the fact that I totally independently of you came up with very similar ideas of what needs to happen, and you're doing them. I'm sure that feels good. I would imagine it does.
This is great. Now, so I'm very excited about this next session, and I feel like I've learned so much over this last month. You know, from you and from Dr. Sarno, and yeah, thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure, and we'll keep at it. So next session, we're going to turn to action steps. We're going to go through all 3 columns and see what needs to be done there. Even in the power column, we may find that there's maybe some fine-tuning that could happen. We'll see.
Sure. Sounds good.
We will explore it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Stephan. Thanks for joining me.
Take care. See you next time.
Well, that was just totally fascinating. I'm always blown away by how different each and every person is. But Stephan's core narrative is all about being different, and you could see one of the reasons that he is. He, I would say, really has kind of figured out the power column in advance of even meeting with me. What he didn't know more is that the information that Dr. Sarno could give him and that I could give him on symptom life and how it applies. And this is one of the reasons he happens to be moving really quickly through it. This is a great example of why the power column is important. He doesn't have to face any of those plateaus because he's already built this into his system. So I was very glad that this happened because seeing him do it without me walking him through it can be very helpful for the rest of you to know what does a power column that's very active and thriving look like. Stephan is a great example of that. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we'll get back to you personally.